Hello and a very warm welcome to another brand new episode of World Panorama, the only show that gets you a 360-degree view of all that's happening in the international arena. I'm Tina Jha. Let's begin with a look at the big stories this week first. Al-Qaeda announces formation of a wing to fan the flames of jihad in the Indian subcontinent. Home Ministry puts all states on high alert. Ukraine and pro-Russian rebels sign a truce deal to end almost 5 months of fighting as European Union and the US line up fresh sanctions against Russia. NATO allies unite against the Islamic State group, announce formation of a rapid reaction force in Eastern Europe to counter Russian aggression. India-Australia signs civil nuclear energy deal, Canberra to sell uranium to energy-starved India for power generation. And Indian tennis star Sania Mirza wins the 2014 US Open mixed doubles title with Brazilian partner Bruno Soares. Sania now holds 3 Grand Slam titles. Well, our top story this week is the Al-Qaeda threat to India. The centre has sounded a nationwide alert after Al-Qaeda video surfaced, purportedly claiming a new wing in India and the neighbouring countries. The Home Ministry is verifying the authenticity of the online video of Ayman al-Zawahiri, which has raised massive security concerns. Take a look at this report.
At a time when the world faces a new terror threat in the form of Islamic State, India is concerned over this online video featuring Al-Qaeda chief Ayman al-Zawahiri. The video purportedly claims to spread Islamic rule and raise the flag of jihad across the Indian subcontinent. He announced a new wing of the terror group called Qaidat al-Jihad. Though the authenticity of the video has not been verified yet, it was enough to send shockwave across the administration. Home Minister Rajnath Singh went into a huddle with top security officials after the Intelligence Bureau's initial assessment said the video to be authentic. As a precautionary measure, the centre has issued alerts across the country. Security agencies feel the video could be an attempt to carry out recruitments in India at a time ISIS grows stronger as a global terror threat.
It is just a propaganda tool to continue a process of provocation, a process in which they are trying to attract Indian cadres or cadres from this entire region. Al-Qaeda is in a very, very clear crisis of survival today. It has not been engaged in any major operation since 9/11.
Political parties also expressed concerns after the video surfaced on internet.
चिंता का विषय है, मगर हम आश्वस्त रहें। बहुत मजबूत सरकार है हमारे केंद्र में। स्वाभाविक रूप से सरकार इस पे जरूर सख्ती से कदम उठाएगी और ऐसा नहीं होने देगी।
Extremely worrying if the Al-Qaeda chief has now put India in the crosshairs of the radical Islamist organizations of the world. The government must take cognizance of this.
The extremist organizations cannot issue threat to Indian nation in such a way, and India cannot become panicky to such calls or such threats, and India has the capacity, inherent strength to face any threat.
Though considerably weakened by the US-led war on terror, Al-Qaeda is still active in Afghanistan and Pakistan. According to the video, it desires to now spread across India, Myanmar and Bangladesh. According to the video, Al-Qaeda is specifically targeting Indian states with sizable Muslim population for recruits. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
All right, and to discuss how big a threat it is for India, we have with us in our studio today former Ambassador V.B. Soni. A very warm welcome to World Panorama, Mr. Soni.
Thank you.
We just saw in the report there are different people with different perceptions as to how big a threat it is for India. Some of them dismiss it as an attempt by the Al-Qaeda to gain prominence. What is your personal opinion on the latest Al-Qaeda video?
My personal opinion is it should not be taken lightly. What is happening is, of late, Al-Qaeda is becoming marginalized force. After the elimination of Osama bin Laden, and there were drone attacks, which really has wiped out the top leadership. So right now there is a lack of sense of direction. So Zawahiri is now really worried because there is an alternative available for the young jihadis, and that is in the form of ISIS. And I think ISIS has really taken the center stage in terms of attracting attention. They are becoming more desperate. I think Al-Qaeda, though dangerous, but I think it's the ISIS which is keeping them behind. So in order to come to the mainstream, in order to attract the younger generation, they are trying to come into limelight in India. The reason being, there are 3 or 4 forces which will be at work. First, of course, is that there is a new government in power. Mr. Narendra Modi's government is quite decisive, quite clear-headed in its mind. And so they want to try out to what extent they will go. Are they ready for any threat like that? Right. The second thing is also, if you were to see, they have tried to include the northeastern states of India, plus included Myanmar by including the Rohingyas. So in order that their attention is not just in India, but also troubled areas in India. So that threat is real because they would like to also come up with some few blasts, etc., which will again bring them into limelight. Right now, it's only ISIS.
What could be the repercussions back home in India of this latest Al-Qaeda video, which sends out a clear-cut warning to the Indian subcontinent? Should the Indian government be worried about it?
No, it has to be taken seriously, but need not necessarily be worried because, as I said, it is not as if the threat is coming tomorrow, but at the same time, you have to take lessons because if you were to ignore these threats, then they will find out that there are certain elements which can be, they can come back and do that, create that problem. So nip the evil in the bud and be decisive. Send a very clear message that this kind of attitude to destabilize India will not be permitted. And secondly, the government, to my mind, is very decisive and very clear-headed in their approach that they will not. As you have seen, the responses of the Home Minister and other agencies, there have also been confirmed reports by the Western news intelligence agencies, particularly the US and others, that India should take it seriously because they had been warned earlier in the past, but whatever the warnings were given, they were not taking it seriously. Please don't do that this time because if you were to do that, there will be dire consequences.
Also, do you see it as a recruitment drive in India? Because lately we've seen a number of Maharashtrian youths from other parts of the country as well. They went ahead and joined the Islamic State. Do you see it as an attempt to launch a recruitment drive movement in India, which the Al-Qaeda is trying to do?
Yeah, let me also say that there is a certain amount of disappointment and disillusionment among the youngsters because they feel the older leadership in the Qaeda and other Islamic groups are not really asserting themselves. So they want to go and fight for the cause, as it were. And they're ready to sacrifice their own lives. The drive is, of course, there, but the response has not been all that impressive. I mean, there have been 10 or 12 youngsters have been identified as one of those who were recruited by them. If you don't stop it now, it will spread to the other states. Right now, it's in Bangalore and other southern states. But the good thing is that some of the Islamic, or rather not the extremist Islamic elements have also condemned this, that India is different because India is all-inclusive. There is no discrimination as such. In this case, it's perceived that India is not really, it's an open society. It's been acknowledged even by the so-called enemies of India. So that is the reason why we should tell them that, look, we mean business. If you want to come and try to target our youngsters feel that they have much more opportunities right now than if they were in Pakistan or other places.
Right, Ambassador Soni, do stay with us. We'll come back and discuss the rise of extremist forces in the other parts of the world as well. Now, on the second and final day of their meeting in Wales, members of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization agreed that the Islamic State group is a significant threat to the world and that they will take on the militants by squeezing their financial resources and going after them with military might. With the Islamic State militants spreading across eastern Syria and northern and western Iraq, US President Barack Obama also urged the Arab states in the Middle East to engage in the fight. US Secretary of State John Kerry, Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel, along with Barack Obama's top counter-terrorism advisor Lisa Monaco are all heading to the Middle East in the coming days in an effort to seek regional commitments to battle the Islamic State. NATO also announced the formation of a rapid reaction force in Eastern Europe. The force would consist of several thousand troops that could quickly mobilize if an alliance country in the region came under attack. All right, Ambassador Soni, coming to the rise of the extremist forces in the other parts of the state. You know, the Islamic State has rapidly been expanding itself in Iraq first, and now it's moved on to Syria. Do you think the NATO coalition, now that the coalition has been announced at the NATO summit, do you think the coalition could expand airstrikes into Iraq and Syria as well, also sending ground forces to Syria to, you know, counter the Islamic State there and then?
This is a dangerous trend. I must say that until and unless the countries in NATO join hands, which they are doing now, but they should go to a certain extent and not all out. The reason being, it has repercussions for the civilians. If the ISIS is spreading, to my mind, will not be able to continue for too long. These are still few new days, and people are still trying it, so they have to be checked at the very beginning. And unless and until some firmness is shown, to my mind, I think the NATO has taken the right decision to combat that. But you asked me the question about operations in Syria. Now, that is a very sensitive issue, because they have tried in the past also, but the forces there, the so-called government forces right now, they are able to control it. And so if a particular border is breached, then it can lead to consequences.
And also because the Syrian government has obviously opposed the US airstrikes.
Yeah, they oppose the airstrike, but they are willing to give them, the NATO forces, cover from air cover in case they were to strike directly at the ISIS forces. So this is first time an indication that there can be some meeting of mind, because the danger is common to both sides. It's not just to the Western countries or NATO, but also Syria is affected by that. So for a short time, if they were to join hands and let them allow to do the fighting, as it were, without really entering into the fray, then it can be handled. To my mind, it should be carefully handled. Syria is a very sensitive issue. It has implications, security implications for the civilians. I'm more worried about the civilians, not so far as the government is concerned.
So the best way in what you're trying to suggest is, you know, the NATO coalition, the United States, the UK, they should empower the Kurdish forces in Iraq. They should empower the Syrian government rather than intervening directly on the ground.
I think they are the ones who know the ground situation better than anybody else. They have tried elsewhere. It has not work. Kurds are the best example. I mean, they have been able to combat them and check that. So the local forces know the situation much better. And also the reaction will not be because if the foreign forces enter those, then the local population may not be as forthcoming, because they feel that it's our battle, and since our own brothers are fighting, let's support them rather than an invading force.
Also, Ambassador Soni, what the point that has been really of a great concern to the world is more and more youngsters from across the world are joining the Islamic State cause. What do you think is the reason behind such a massive youngsters flowing into the
I think the answer is quite simple, really, because they feel that there are no job opportunities. I mean, there is so much of instability in Syria, and if you were to see in that part of the world, where do they go? There is no opportunities in a big way, because, again, take Palestine, take Syria, take Iraq, take whichever country you like, there are instability, there is no economic activity happening. They were hoping that the reconstruction facility in Iraq will start, and that will give them opportunities. Right. It's not happened to the extent they are. So the frustration seeps in, because if it's a youngster, 18, 19 years of age, and he finds that there is no job. So where does he go? He goes and probably sits down with his friends having coffee or beer or whatever it is. And after that, psychologically, they feel that they're not wanted by the society.
But the atrocities they're indulging in is of a great concern to the entire world.
It is something which has to be checked by the societies themselves. They have to not alienate those youngsters, but to give them hope. And the hope can be given only if they were involved in various decision-making. Right now, the decisions are taken right at the top level. Right. So they must be involved. They must be brought in and said, to be told that, look, the future is with this. If you go to these kind of extremist elements, if you fall prey to them, where is the hope? and there will be destruction.
All right, Ambassador Soni, thank you very much for joining us this week and sharing your perspective with us. Now, moving on, in another major